So the way you defeat Trump is by putting together a strong grassroots, multigenerational, multiracial, working class movement, and that is exactly what we are doing.
So what you just heard there was Bernie Sanders at a rally in Ames, Iowa, talking about what it's going to take to defeat Donald Trump, who Bernie Sanders calls the most dangerous president in modern American history. And this speech wasn't only about defeating Trump, it was also about the building of a movement, and it was also about the policies that Bernie Sanders is championing in this campaign and that he's championed for generations: healthcare, education, workers' rights, women's rights, and on and on and on and on. But Bernie in this speech gave special attention to electability, to how you have to have a candidate tailor-made to stop Donald Trump. And this is something that I've been asking for on this channel over the past couple weeks, because the reality is Bernie Sanders is surging in the polls. There's no doubt that these have been a couple really good weeks for Bernie Sanders. And more people, whether it's in the early states, whether it's in the Super Tuesday states, or whether it's in the general national polling, are moving to Bernie Sanders like they haven't in the rest of the campaign thus far. And this is in addition to the fact that Bernie continues to raise a ton of money from a ton of donors and a ton of donations, all averaging less than $20 per donation. But Joe Biden in many of the national polls still edges out Bernie by a couple percent, or when Bernie leads, Biden is right behind him. And so it has to be asked, why is Biden there? And as I've noted on this channel more than once, Biden primarily is in competition with Bernie, not because people actually like anything about Joe Biden or his policies or his legacy or his proposed path for the country, but simply because he's perceived as the only one, as the most likely one to defeat Donald Trump. Despite the evidence, despite the fact that Biden's, neoliberal record will be ripe for attack by Donald Trump's fake populism, despite the fact that we've seen poll after poll now show that Bernie Sanders is just as competitive with Biden versus Trump, and in some polls, even more competitive. Many people in the Democratic Party's primary voting base still think Biden is the only one that can defeat Donald Trump. And so they're sticking with him because, of course, they want to defeat Trump. Bernie does not deny that defeating Donald Trump is important, although Bernie Sanders does acknowledge that the real work starts the day after he's defeated if we want to build a progressive revolution. Nonetheless, Bernie does not ignore the fact that he needs to make a case for electability. And he does so in this rally. What he noted in this clip was the need to build a broad working class coalition to defeat Donald Trump. That's the way you're going to do it. Hillary Clinton didn't do that. Hillary Clinton, in opposition to that idea, tried to bank on a suburban middle-class coalition to defeat Donald Trump, hoping that she could take working-class people in the Rust Belt for granted, in Michigan, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and rather bank on victory in the suburban parts of the country where there are Republican Democratic swing voters. And those people let her down, and many working class people either didn't vote or felt left out by the political status quo, and whether you agree with them or not, they went with Trump. And that's how Donald Trump won the election. Bernie Sanders realizes that the path to victory is the tens, the hundreds of millions of working class people who need a political representative, and they haven't had one from especially the Republican Party, of course, but even from too many neoliberal Democrats. Whether they're white or black, whether they're younger or older, whether they have post-secondary educations or not, Bernie Sanders knows that this diverse coalition is the only antidote to Trump and his dangerous, xenophobic, hateful politics. That's the truth. And so at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders' argument for electability isn't, I'm going to be the arbiter of a neoliberal status quo. I'm going to pretend that Trump never happened, that the 2008 financial crisis never happened, that severe social and political and cultural and economic inequalities aren't happening and haven't happened. And I'm going to be the president for everybody who's doing just fine, but doesn't want to rock the boat to make anything better. That didn't work with Hillary. It's not going to work with Biden. It's not going to work with Buttigieg. It's not even going to work with Elizabeth Warren, who is proposing at least somewhat some smaller changes. It's only going to work with somebody that takes on Donald Trump's ugly vision with a vision that is predicated not just on opposition to Trump, but on building something way better than Trump. That's the path forward. And Bernie Sanders has repeatedly noted this, that he will drive more turnout than there's ever been in modern American electoral history. That's what it's going to take to beat Trump. You're not going to beat Trump primarily by taking Trump voters. Many Trump voters were just happy and fine to vote for Trump, and many will vote for him again. You might flip some, but that's not the way to beat him. The way to beat him is to get the people who didn't vote in 2016. Maybe they voted in 2008 and 2012, but they didn't vote in 2016 because neither Clinton nor Trump spoke to them. They want a champion. Obama, for all his neoliberal betrayals, spoke to those people, at least enough of them to win both of his elections. Bernie Sanders, a genuine progressive voice, will get all of those people and more to come and vote for him. And Bernie Sanders notes specifically the need to reach out to young people. Young people in many ways are the focus of Bernie Sanders' campaign. He notes that he wants to build a multi-generational coalition, and I don't think he's lying when he says that, but we all know that Bernie Sanders has a special meaning to young people, and young people have a special meaning to Bernie Sanders. And Bernie notes very clearly at this rally, which was full of young people all throughout the crowd, if you see the pictures. More young people at Bernie rallies than at any other candidate's rallies. Young people are the key needed to crack the code to defeat Donald Trump. It's as simple as that. Young people need to vote. Bernie notes that young people are the most progressive generation maybe in American history, and that when they vote, over 2/3 of them will vote for a progressive candidate like Bernie. But they don't vote as often as older people do. And so people like Joe Biden, people like Pete Buttigieg, even Elizabeth Warren, they do not have the deep and broad and consistent enthusiasm of young people that Bernie Sanders has. They just don't. Not at all. Those candidates might get some votes from young people out of a sense that they have to defeat Donald Trump, but those young people who won't vote unless they can go and vote for something affirmatively will only come out for Bernie. And you can say that that's wrong of them. You can tut-tut them. You can judge them. You can, quibble at them. But ultimately, they're going to come vote for Bernie, and I don't think they're going to vote for many of the other Democratic candidates. Bernie Sanders has been very clear. If young people come out, they can defeat Donald Trump and usher in a progressive America. If they don't, Donald Trump will win again. And the Republicans will likely take control of the House and will likely maintain control of the Senate because that's the reality. Bernie Sanders is the one with a program, whether it's canceling student debt, whether it's making university education free, whether it's building programs like Medicare that will help young people who don't have workplace health insurance and dental insurance and pharmaceutical insurance, whether it's fighting to make unionization easier, which will help all workers, but especially a young generation that's facing a precarious and low-wage job future. On all of the issues, Bernie is speaking to everybody, but to young people most of all. And that's the electability angle. Getting people to the goddamn polls. It's as simple as that. You don't get people to the polls through wine cave fundraisers. You don't get people to the polls through neoliberal half-assery. You don't get people to the polls simply by opposing Trump. You get people to the polls by building a vision, not just for them, but with them for a better society. Only Bernie Sanders is doing that. Only Bernie Sanders rallies demonstrate that he's the one that can drag people out to hear a 70-something-year-old man talk to them about politics. Bernie Sanders is the one to drive turnout. Bernie Sanders is the one with the electability edge. And Bernie Sanders is the only Democratic candidate, I feel, who will defeat Donald Trump in November.